Welcome to the deep dive. You've brought us a fascinating source today, one that really challenges how most of us think about the food we eat every day.
Yeah, it definitely does. We're looking at excerpts from 12 Steps to Raw Foods: How to End Your Dependency on Cooked Food by Victoria Boutenko.
And it puts forward a pretty bold idea, doesn't it? That our relationship with cooked foods, something so central to our culture, might actually be a dependency.
That's the core premise. And it doesn't just state the problem, it offers a whole framework, a 12-step program to potentially overcome it.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack the main arguments Victoria Boutenko makes, drawing just from the material you've provided us.
Right. We want to look at the science she presents,
Yeah.
cooked versus raw stuff, the historical context she gives for our diets.
And that practical 12-step program itself.
Yeah.
We're aiming to pull out the key ideas, the evidence she uses, and the solutions proposed.
Yeah, get to the heart of it. Not just summarizing, but like exploring the logic and the more surprising insights she offers. Hopefully with some clarity.
It seems like the source covers a lot of ground, science, history, personal stories.
Oh, definitely. And the personal anecdotes are quite powerful. Plus the structured program.
And that initial hook is, well, pretty arresting. The idea that staple foods, things like bread or milk, could be framed as addictive.
Or even just cooked food in general as a dependency. It immediately makes you stop and think, doesn't it, about your own habits.
It really does. So let's dive right into that main idea. Cooked food as a potential dependency. Where does she start with that?
Well, it seems to stem from her observations. She noticed how incredibly hard it was for people to stick to a raw diet.
Even people who felt better on it, like more energy, feeling younger.
Exactly. Even when they reported those benefits, the pull towards cooked food often seemed overwhelming, derailing their efforts almost right away.
But she contrasts that with her workshops, right? She mentions a high success rate there.
Yeah, she gives this example of her first workshop in Portland. 43 people, and she says they were all still primarily raw a month later,
Yeah.
which is, well, quite a claim compared to the usual struggle.
So what's the explanation offered? Why the difference?
The book suggests it's not just about taste or willpower, it delves into the psychological side.
Ah, the comfort food aspect.
Yeah.
Stress eating.
Precisely. Using eating as a way to cope with stress, to relax, and how that can become so ingrained, so normal that you don't even recognize it as a pattern, potentially masking a dependency.
And she has that questionnaire in the book too, doesn't she? To help people identify potential signs.
Right, asking things like, do you eat when you're not actually hungry? Do you break promises to yourself about food? Spend your last bit of money on a specific food you crave?
Or eating something even when you know it's going to make you feel sick afterwards.
Yeah, those kinds of questions. And the book really emphasizes that acknowledging the possibility of dependency, just admitting it might be there, is the absolute first step, the foundation for change.
Okay, so if it's potentially more than just preference, maybe a dependency, what are the underlying reasons presented in the source? This brings us to the science bit, yeah.
Exactly. The book reviews scientific research, or at least presents interpretations of it, to argue for the benefits of raw food and the potential downsides of cooking.
And one of the big things she talks about are AGs, advanced glycoxidation end products.
Yes, AGGs. These are compounds formed when sugars react with proteins during cooking. Think browning, like the Maillard reaction.
The stuff that makes roasted food taste good.
That's the one. But the book describes these AGs as having a pathological structure and potential toxic effects.
And it links them to some serious health concerns, citing research, of course.
Yeah, it cites research suggesting AGs are a chronic risk factor for things like cardiovascular problems, kidney damage, other diseases.
There's that table in the excerpts, isn't there, showing the difference in AG levels.
Oh yeah, that table is striking. Raw apple versus baked apple, raw chicken versus fried. The levels jump dramatically with cooking. Even boiled versus fried potatoes show a huge difference.
It's quite visual.
Yeah.
And she offers a personal view on reversing them, too.
Right. While some of the cited research might imply AGEs are hard to reverse, she believes, based on her experience, that increasing raw food and cutting fat might actually help undo some of that accumulation and the crosslinks they form.
Interesting. What other harmful substances does the book mention?
Acrylamide is another big one, called a carcinogenic substance, linked to cooking starchy foods, chips, fries, bread, cereals.
And presented as a global problem.
Yes, and the cited research apparently found undetectable levels in uncooked foods. Then there are HCAs, heterocyclic amines, and other mutagens mentioned in relation to cooked and processed meats and fish.
So a key part of the argument is that cooking itself introduces these problematic compounds.
That seems to be a major thrust, yeah. Compounds largely absent in raw, whole foods.
Okay, so flip side, what about the beneficial things in raw or live foods?
Well, the book highlights phytonutrients and antioxidants. It gives specific examples like resveratrol, which it claims can activate longevity genes,
And something in carrots.
falcarinol, found in raw carrots, presented as potentially helping with cancer prevention or healing. And it mentions a study showing that even light cooking like blanching significantly reduces it.
Chlorophyll comes up too.
Yeah, pointing out how similar its structure is to human blood. And it references Dr. Ann Wigmore's work, suggesting chlorophyll offers benefits akin to a healthy blood transfusion.
And finally, on the science side, digestibility.
Right. The source mentions studies suggesting cooking destroys natural digestive enzymes in food and alters its structure, potentially making it harder for us to digest. This is connected to research comparing raw versus cooked vegetables in relation to cancer risk.
Okay, so if cooking has these potential downsides, according to the book, how did it become so universal? This leads into the historical angle she presents.
Yeah, she paints a picture starting way back with our ancestors, like Australopithecus, suggesting they were primarily raw food eaters in tropical Africa, fruits, bark, things like that.
Then a shift towards hunting.
As populations grew, food became scarcer, leading to hunting smaller than larger animals. She includes some stories about people eating unusual raw things, like bugs or raw fish, just to survive.
And hunting became more crucial in colder areas, right?
Yeah.
When plants weren't available.
Exactly. Though she notes meat might not have been shared equally. Interestingly, the book points out plant cultivation actually predates animal domestication by thousands of years.
So plants remained important for a long time.
Very much so, especially greens for ordinary people, peasants in places like Russia and Germany. She mentions a historical figure, the Zlenshik, basically, a greens seller, a forgotten profession now.
Even the rich ate raw greens.
Apparently, yes. Alongside their meat, they consumed large quantities of raw fruits, vegetables, and greens. There's even a medieval salad recipe cited as an example.
So cooking wasn't always the default.
The book argues no. It suggests early humans used fire for warmth and light long, long before they started cooking regularly. We're talking maybe 790,000 years ago for fire control, but much later for routine cooking.
And even then, cooking was considered a luxury.
For a long time, yes, because of the labor involved. Gathering wood, starting fires before matches existed, which wasn't until 1827, relatively recently.
And the book argues cooking itself changed food in a way that fostered dependency.
Yeah, creating what she calls toxic molecules that could act like stimulants, leading to false cravings. And it links the historical rise in cooked and processed food consumption to malnutrition and deficiency diseases.
Scurvy, rickets, beriberi.
Right, diseases that cause huge numbers of deaths historically. The book connects this to moving away from more natural raw food sources.
Then came industrialization.
Yeah.
Canning and processing.
Absolutely. That really changed the game in the mid to late 1800s. Canning made processed, cooked foods cheap, convenient, and widely available.
So people started eating a lot more canned goods, sausages, white bread, candy.
Exactly. And the book draws a direct line, a correlation between that dietary shift and what it calls an explosion in cancer death rates and degenerative diseases from 1900 onwards. Tripling, it says, by the year 2000.
It mentions cancer becoming the leading cause of death in the U.S. recently.
Yeah, citing that statistic. And it includes that observation from World War II Europe when food restrictions limited meat and processed foods. The incidence of some diseases apparently dropped, according to the source.
That historical overview sets a stage. But the book really drives the point home with the author's personal family story, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That part is incredibly vivid. It starts with her son, Sergei, getting diagnosed with diabetes, her fear, her determination to find an alternative to insulin, quoting her grandmother, "Seek and you shall find."
But her husband, Igor, was a major obstacle initially.
Huge. Called raw food, rabbit food, loved his cooked Russian meals, threatened divorce, all while having his own health problems, like needing thyroid surgery for a neck swelling.
So what changed? It sounds like she took some drastic measures.
Extremely drastic. She describes literally clearing the kitchen of all cooked food implements, covered the stove, got rid of the coffee maker, toaster, pasta maker,
And the microwave?
smashed it. Based on her belief about research, she said led to them being illegal in Russia. She even put brand new pots and pans out on the street. A total clean sweep.
Wow. I can only imagine the family's reaction.
Predictable, right? Kids upset, Sergey wanting insulin, Igor hungry and feeling lost, even TV food ads becoming unbearable.
But then things started to shift quite quickly.
Almost immediately. The very next morning, there were signs of acceptance, banana peels. Her daughter Valya's cough vanished overnight. Sergey's blood sugar was lower. Both she and Igor felt a bit lighter, more energetic, though still very hungry.
And within a month.
Remarkable changes reported. Sergey's blood sugar stable, Igor's pulse down, Valya running cough-free, the author losing weight, and everyone just buzzing with energy. Always running, she says.
Which led to actual running.
Yes, inspired by reading about benefits for diabetics. Sergey's sugar levels stabilized even more with jogging added to the diet. They ran a little race, won medals, and got hooked.
A key practical element in this journey was discovering green smoothies.
That seems like a real turning point. They struggled with eating plain greens, initially chewing difficulties, maybe low stomach acid from processed
This
foods.
is the blender idea.
Yeah, like chewing greens in the blender. The first try, just kale and water, was apparently disgusting. Queasy smell, she says.
But adding fruit made the difference.
Bananas were the magic ingredient. Suddenly it smelled good, tasted pleasant, fresh.
And that changed their relationship with greens.
Completely, they started craving them, stopped missing old foods, felt satisfied. Unhealthy cravings faded, grazing stopped.
And the reported benefits were significant.
Rejuvenation, ending cravings for heavy stuff. Igor's beard supposedly growing back blacker, the green smoothie champion. Plus the kids needing less sleep but having more energy.
The book includes other anecdotes too, right?
Yeah,
About the
yeah.
struggles people face.
Yeah, from her workshops. Stories of people sneaking cooked food, candy, donuts, pizza, potato skins, always in secret with shame. It highlights that feeling of compulsion, not just simple enjoyment.
And her own story about confronting people in supermarkets.
Ah, yeah. Chasing overweight ladies in Safeway to tell them about raw food. Making enemies, she admits, and realizing that approach doesn't work. People need to find their own way.
And that story about Linda and Jim, where pushing failed but leading by example succeeded.
Right. Linda pushed Jim, failed herself, but Jim succeeded and found community. It all reinforces the psychological complexity and the need for a supportive approach.
Which naturally leads into the core structure she proposes.
Yeah,
The 12-step program.
exactly. It's presented as this methodical way to tackle the dependency, covering everything from awareness and nutrition to support systems and, well, deeper purpose.
Can you quickly list the steps mentioned?
Sure. It's becoming aware, nourishing body, acquiring skills equipment, I love you no matter what you eat, avoiding temptations, getting support, gratitude and forgiveness, actualizing dreams, embracing other healthy habits, gaining clarity, searching for spiritual mission, and giving support to others.
Quite comprehensive.
Yeah,
And it acknowledges the difficulty,
Hmm.
right? The need for compassion.
very much so. That comes through strongly. It's not presented as easy, hence the need for structure and support.
Okay, let's dig into a few of these steps more deeply. Step 1, becoming aware. That question, is it really a dependency?
Yeah, it circles back to those dependency signs we talked about, the questionnaire. And she has that simple overeating experiment thought exercise.
Have you overeaten? Did you like it? Can you promise not to do it again?
Right. And most people say yes, no, yes, but then they do it again. It highlights the pattern, the cycle.
And how food gets tied up with everything. Celebrations, holidays.
It's not just fuel, it's emotion, it's social connection. And the book cites Cornell research suggesting dependency isn't always about seeking pleasure, but sometimes just needing the substance to feel normal or satisfied.
So choosing, say, a croissant over a mango might not just be taste, but fulfilling that deeper need. Numbing something.
That's the perspective offered. Not just a bad choice, but maybe driven by something else entirely. And the book stresses that getting this diagnosis right, recognizing the dependency if it's there, is crucial for any real change.
Then step 2 flows from that. Nourishing your body to eliminate cravings.
Yeah, linking modern processed diets and chronic malnutrition to poor health stats and rising healthcare costs.
And the practical solution offered is
Green smoothies again. Even if you're still eating cooked food, the book strongly recommends them. Testimonials in the source claim they reduce cravings, improve health issues, even boost mood.
there's an interesting point about taste variety, too. Raw food versus cooked.
Right. How typical cooked meals often rely on sauces and condiments because the core ingredients can be bland, whereas raw foods have complex natural flavors. She uses that simple cabbage recipe as an example, flavorful with minimal additions.
And the idea that taste buds can recover.
Yeah, that on a raw diet, you start appreciating simpler, natural tastes more. And the importance of balancing the five flavors, spicy, salty, sweet, sour, bitter, in raw dishes to make them satisfying. Like that story of guests thinking her raw feast was exotic Russian food.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, chapters 15 and 16 get into the psychological side again. Looking for comfort and feeding inner hunger.
Back to stress and the habit of eating for comfort, she makes that stark observation about supermarkets, maybe 90% comfort items, only 10% truly nutritious.
Separating food from nutrition, we eat pizza or chips often for pleasure or comfort, not nutrients.
Exactly. And the source argues that trying to feed emotional needs or numb emptiness with food just makes the underlying problem worse.
So it suggests alternatives.
Like walking. Simple, natural movement. Good for body and mind, releases endorphins. The advice is walk your dog every day, even if you don't have one.
And inner hunger takes it deeper, to a spiritual level.
Yeah, using food to numb emptiness, depression. The book cites some pretty stark statistics about depression and suicide, and even questions the effectiveness of antidepressants compared to placebos, based on the research presented.
So what's the alternative approach suggested for that inner hunger?
It points towards fostering spiritual beliefs, finding a sense of purpose, sharing experiences, things often central to 12-step programs like AA or OA, which are inherently spiritual, aiming for wholeness and happiness.
It talks about spiritual emptiness even affecting people who are religious,
Yeah.
especially when faced with injustice.
Right. And references Alfie Kohn on human nature being inherently caring, contrasting that with destructive behaviors that might stem from losing touch with that core.
The book frames this spiritual pain, boredom, emptiness, lack of meaning, as potentially worse than physical pain.
And a root cause, potentially, of addictions or even suicide if it's not addressed. Finding fulfillment, finding your purpose, is presented as key, which ties into step 11.
Before we get there, let's touch on support. Step 6, getting support. And step 4, I love you no matter what you eat.
Key idea here. Willpower often isn't enough.
The Odysseus analogy.
Exactly. He had strong will, but still needed his crew to tie him up to resist the sirens. Illustrates the need for external help against powerful temptations. Having a clear long-term goal helps too, the book suggests.
But getting support from family and friends can be tricky.
Very. The advice is clear. Don't push, don't judge. Remember the author's chasing overweight lady's mistake. Respect others' choices.
So how do you ask for support effectively, according to the book?
Be sincere, explain why you need it for your health, frame it positively, more energy, more love, suggest specific alternatives to old habits, like offering fruit instead of chocolate. Ask for tempting things to be kept away.
The idea being, if others don't feel judged, they're more likely to help.
Exactly. They feel safe, maybe even get inspired themselves, like the Linda and Jim story, again, pushing failed, gentle example worked.
Okay, step 9, embracing other healthy habits. Diet isn't everything.
Right. It's foundational, but not the whole picture. The book lists other crucial things. Breathing, water, exercise, sleep, sunlight, cleanliness, emotional balance, stress management, creativity, social connection, grounding, even cold tempering.
Let's pick out a few specifics mentioned. Sleep.
Crucial for healing. Recommendations include sleeping in fresh air, the author's family sleeps outside year-round, avoiding electrical devices nearby for energy-fueled restoration, and sleeping on hard surfaces for spine and joint health.
Breathing.
Essential for waste elimination, 70% of metabolic waste, it says. Notes most people have unhealthy patterns like chest breathing or holding breath. Recommends checking for and returning to natural abdominal breathing.
Cure water.
Huge emphasis. Makes up most of our body. Chronic dehydration linked to many illnesses. Lots of benefits listed: pH balance, blood pressure, joint pain relief, mental function, weight loss.
And cold tempering. Winter swimming. That sounded intense.
It did. presented as boosting metabolism, purging toxins, strengthening immunity massively, contrasted with our constant temperature control disabling natural regulation.
It cited a statistic about sickness rates.
Yeah, winter swimmers having 60 times lower rates for cold-type illnesses. Presented as healing for arthritis, hypertension, diabetes, etc. Describes this feeling of instant free heat after the cold dip, deep relaxation, real enjoyment.
The author's family does it regularly.
Yes, and feels a loss when they miss it. Notes it's growing in popularity, polar bear clubs, and points to centenarians often living in mountain areas with temperature swings.
Moving on, step 10, gaining clarity. How is that defined?
It's presented as distinct from just having knowledge. Clarity is seeing things as they are, separating truth from deception, knowing what you really want and need, seeing events without distortion.
Whereas knowledge is described as someone else's opinion.
Kind of. Accumulated knowledge, the book argues, can actually block clarity. Memorizing facts versus understanding how things function. The author felt gaining clarity freed her from relying on experts.
So it involves questioning our conditioning, beliefs we just absorbed.
Exactly. Beliefs like need milk for calcium, eat big to grow big, need a certain career for success. The idea is that just observing these thoughts, seeing them as learned ideas, can make them lose their power, replaced by clarity.
Which leads into step 11, searching for one's spiritual mission.
Affirming we're spiritual beings connected to everything uses the image of a blade of grass pushing through concrete as an example of life force.
And connects mission to passion, doing what you love.
Yes. Contrasts her husband's passion for massage, loves it, doesn't care about pay, with her lack of it. And her passion for deep conversation, loses track of time, versus his difficulty with it. Find what makes you forget time, food, sleep.
And suggests finding work that uses those passions.
Even if it means less money, the fulfillment is worth more. Links destructive work, harmful products, bad entertainment, to people not following their mission. Points to the power of focused passion, like Gandhi or Mother Teresa.
And circles back to spiritual pain.
Right. Not following your mission creates that boredom, emptiness, loss of purpose, which people then try to numb with food or other addictions. This pain, it argues, can be unbearable, driving depression and suicide. Finding your mission is presented as the antidote.
And the final step, step 12, giving support to others.
Framed as helping yourself by helping others.
How did that work?
Validates your own choices, deepens your understanding through teaching, and helps create a world with more acceptance and options for this lifestyle.
Planting a seed.
Yeah, by sharing delicious raw food. Way to the heart is through the stomach, it says, remembering how impressive tasty raw food can be.
And it ends with a vision for the future.
Raw options everywhere, restaurants, planes, schools, billboards, juicers in offices, sprouts at convenience stores. A future you can help build by sharing your journey.
So, stepping back, this deep dive has really untacked a whole philosophy, hasn't it? Not just a diet book.
Definitely. It starts with that provocative idea of cooked food dependency, offers scientific points, as presented in the source, about AGs and raw food benefits,
Provides a historical lens, shares that really intense personal family story.
and then lays out that comprehensive 12-step path tackling physical, psychological, and spiritual angles. It's a whole framework.
It certainly challenges you to think. That idea from chapter 6 that our bodies make constant adjustments to modern life, and each adjustment costs us health and lifespan.
Yeah, makes you wonder. Which brings us to that final thought for you, the listener, based on this source.
If the book is suggesting we're constantly adapting, maybe in ways that aren't great for us long term, what small habit in your life, food-related, or maybe something else entirely, could you pause and question today?
And what more natural way of living, perhaps inspired by some of the ideas we've touched on from this source, might you feel curious enough to explore, even just a little bit?
Definitely a lot to chew on there. Thank you for bringing these sources in for this deep dive. It's been fascinating.